So welcome everyone, and again, my name is Treb, and I'm going to give you my intro in a minute, but we're going to look at how project, and I'm going to talk about online and server as well, could work with Power BI. And I'm going to start off by, because of the poll numbers, we have quite a number of people who maybe aren't using Power BI. They maybe aren't as familiar with it as they would need to be. So I'm going to go through a brief introduction of really what is Power BI, what is the problem they're trying to solve. Then talk a little bit about the why, because I think one of the things that people may not have heard from Microsoft is really why did they do Power BI? Why didn't they just simply enhance Excel? And then talk about how can I plug it into my existing instances of project, be it Project Online, Project Server, even back to 2010, you can use Power BI if you really want to look at it. And since a large number of you are using Excel services, the follow-on to this is why would I consider Power BI over Excel services? So we'll go through specifically against Excel. And then we're going to talk about some of the integration with other Microsoft tools like Flow that are things that you can't do really with any other tool. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Treb Gott, from Louisiana originally, so my name is not pronounced anyway the way it's spelled. It's always a little bit different. And I'm managing partner for a company called Tumble Road out here. We and Trusted IT go way back. We've been partnering in a lot of projects, and we do work on large enterprise type engagements. So we've done a lot of work rolling out Project BI in a number of places. When I was at Microsoft, I was actually the BI PM. So if you've ever cursed the way Excel services works with Project, I'm the guy you need to blame for that, because that was my team that put together that integration. And hopefully, as we go through this process in this presentation, that perspective may help understand why I prefer Power BI these days. And we'll talk more about that when I get there. So I want to start off first by just giving you a brief overview of Power BI and really what is it that they were trying to solve with this. So originally, they did roll it out as part of Excel. And you may have seen this back in 2010. We had the initial release of Power Pivot. And in 2013, they enhanced it with Power Query and Power View. And this was a plugin into Excel. And the challenge that they ran into, where Power Pivot was where you kept the data, Power Query was where you would use to get to the data. So here's where I keep it, here's where I get it, and then Power View was here's where I'm trying to build a dashboard surface using Excel, and basically where you see it. And these three things seem to work okay. But the challenge was they were trying to push out functionality on a regular basis, and people don't upgrade Excel very often. In fact, if they upgrade it once a decade, sometimes it's amazing. And so really and truly, what we needed to do was break Power BI out of Excel. And so I think it was late last year, Microsoft defined a data strategy where there are three pillars. There is Excel for detailed analytical reporting, where I need to get into the deep numbers. SSRS for more enterprise BI, where I'm delivering recurring reports, emailing it, that sort of thing. And then Power BI really is for data visualization and exploration. And so what they did is they actually broke out the tool, they rewrote it, and they combined all of the functionality that was in Power Pivot, Power Query, Power View into Power BI Desktop. And then we have PowerBI.com, which is the cloud hosting element of it, which I'll go into in a bit more in a moment. And as we go through and we look at Power BI versus Excel, one of the things I'm going to talk about is content packs. And content packs was something that they rolled out that was very important to solve a problem that people were having with Excel services. We go into it. Really, one of the key mantras of Power BI is your data anywhere you need to see it, any way you need to see it. And so if you look at the top, every major browser and mobile platform is supported, because mobile is a massive demand for Power BI. I mean, it's the fastest growing segment of use we're seeing with the tool. Currently, if you're going to share your content, you do have to publish to the cloud, which if you're in the cloud already is not a problem. If you're on premises, this might be something new for you. But currently, until SQL Server vNext, the one following 2016, is released, we don't yet have an on-premises story yet for Power BI. It's coming. Power BI Desktop is basically like Word to SharePoint, if you will. You're creating your content in Power BI Desktop. When you're ready to share it to the world, you publish it to PowerBI.com. Then they can see it in all the major platforms. The other piece that they did with Power BI with the rewrite is really understanding that data can come from anywhere, both managed and unmanaged sources. So, for example, I could be pulling together data from Salesforce, from Azure, from an Excel spreadsheet, and from an on-prem database, say Project Server, and I can mix and match this stuff. And I call it, being from Louisiana, a data gumbo. It doesn't really matter where the data comes from. I can pull it all together and create that logical view of this. And the beauty of the way they implemented this is that I don't have to be an expert at every one of these platforms. And I think at the last time I looked at it, there was close to 60 connectors. I don't have to know the internal workings of Salesforce. I just need the connection information, and Power BI takes care of it from there. So there's a lot of things that they do for you to make it easier. And once the data's in Power BI, it all works the same. So the first wave, and I really hearken this back to the beginning of my career when I was writing RPG programs on an AS400. People would submit a change request to IT. IT would eventually get around to writing a report that had to be good enough, because who knows when we were going to get back to writing it again. And it wasn't because we were just being ornery. We simply were overwhelmed, and everybody wanted reporting. So that was the first wave. The other challenge with this is that really and truly wasn't solving the full need, which is I need to see the shape of the data. I need better visuals and better access. And so where we are today is we're in the third wave of BI, where we need data everywhere. And it goes well beyond just simple list of data. I mean, we've got charts, graphs, we have Cortana integration, we have, if you've bought an Echo during Christmas when Amazon was basically making them very cheap, I mean, think about voice interaction, those Star Trek moments where we just simply ask the computer for a question and she has the answer. Imagine being able to tie that in, and all of that is now becoming possible in this AI. So it's changing the way that we're looking at it. Now, it's all part of a way coming over the next 2 years, because what we're seeing now is we've been in the static report part of BI. It's very manual. People joke that their most common workflow action is still copy-paste, because they're copying from various sources. Even if we have data connected Excel spreadsheets, it's still very manual to set this up. With Power BI, it gets us further up the scale here, where we have interactive dashboards that encourage data exploration. And we have built-in forecasting now for some of the chart visuals, so that I can get a sense of where things are going. And I can actually integrate Power BI with some of the Azure machine learning functionality. It's there, but it's not fully baked yet. And if you see where we're going here, the most mature organizations for BI are really taking this further with chatbots and full-blown automation, where it's almost Amazon-like, that the computer can give them back answers before they even realize they had the question. And so really and truly, the functionality you're going to see rolled out over the next 2 years is really completing this overall vision to give you the ability to move up the stack as much as you want to in order to take better advantage of the data you're generating. So from a project perspective, imagine it automatically spitting back, you have a resource allocation problem, and by the way, there are some people who are available that you might want to put in there without you ever having to go look for it. That type of capability will be there. And really, it'll be supported by this very large variety of products that Microsoft has. If you've heard about, a lot of the Azure type functionality with data factories and data catalogs, SQL data warehouse, data lakes and whatnot, all of that is coming together to give you this much richer BI. Power BI is just simply the beginning. It's the front end, the most visual piece of it now. And this will all connect to Excel at some point, but really and truly, that's not the focus going forward. They really want to give you this ability to have a more interactive, richer experience with your data. And so when we look at Power BI versus Project, and I have all the latest versions on there, there's really two ways to connect Power BI to Project. If you're online, you don't have direct access to the databases. So you're using the OData protocol, which is an industry standard way of accessing cloud services. So if I wanted to do a report from Project, Netflix, for whatever reason, and Facebook, yes, I can tie all three together using OData and Power BI. And you can also pull out your SharePoint data using OData. So this is something that we really couldn't do very easily before, is Power BI has ways where you can actually traverse SharePoint sites. So you could actually go out and pull your custom list data from various sites into the model using OData. And again, giving you a much richer reporting experience. And then all of this is then pushed to the Power BI service, which then, at this point, if you're using Project Online, it's an Azure to Azure query, so it's very fast, and because it's all usually within the same data center. If I'm going against Project Server, where I have an on-premise instance, or I have an instance maybe that's being hosted in the cloud or in a private cloud somewhere, then I will be using something called the Data Management Gateway. And the Data Management Gateway just simply creates a connection between the Azure Service Bus, which is the endpoint for PowerBI.com, through port 443 usually, so HTTPS, and then connecting to your local data. And if you're using the Data Management Gateway, this gives you the ability to determine which users have access to which data sources. It gives you auditing, and it gives you a lot of functionality around just managing who is accessing what. And through it, you can connect to local SQL, and you can connect to local OLAP databases. However, they have made this story a Power BI Pro license only. And once you use a Pro feature, everyone has to go Pro that's going to be using this reporting capabilities. One of the things you're going to see over the next year, I think, is a bigger push by Microsoft to get people to sign up for Power BI Pro. And the Power BI free license really should be considered to be a developer license, not really something meant to be taken into production for a number of reasons. But so if you have somebody who's looking at this, and maybe they're looking at some of the competitors like Tableau or Qlik, which are much more expensive, they need to perhaps start factoring that into their budget planning, that this is just something we're going to get a lot of benefit out of, and for Microsoft, a fairly minimal investment might be worthwhile to take a look at and determine how you're going to roll that out. So once you've got your connections and you're pulling your data into Power BI, what are some of the advantages that Power BI has over Excel? So one of the biggest advantages, and this is something that Forrester has noted, is that it is much faster to extend the Power BI content than it is the Excel content. That basically, if a user asks for something new, we can usually turn that around fairly quickly. And it is much cheaper to do it this way. And the reason for that is that we don't spend as much time doing what's called data plumbing. The data model is where you would do all of this, connecting to the data, all of the Power BI version of different queries and whatnot. And if you consider that your average department has roughly 100 reports under management per year, and 50% of these are ad hoc, when they looked at it, it took on average 32 hours per report to create each of these. And so if you looked at your fully loaded cost, that could be up to $6,000. Whereas with Power BI, I have tools like Power Q&A where I can simply type in a question and get my response. I didn't have to write a report for that. It's a much faster way of getting to this ad hoc reporting need. And so if you were looking at just ad hoc savings, this could easily be roughly a $300,000 cost savings opportunity for your organization, just using Power BI. And it's really around the 70% because we're incorporating that into the data model, and the data model can be used to support as many reports as you want to write on top of it. It's not like I have to redo the query for every Excel report as I'm having to do today. So you spend less time to do this, and you'll have a huge way of perhaps saving some money and effort within your own organization. And we are seeing clients creating reusable solutions. And so what they're doing is they'll create data models and some initial reports. They'll save these off as Power BI templates. They'll create a template library within their own SharePoint organization, and if an analyst needs a specific reporting need, they just simply go download the template, fire it up, build out whatever custom report they need, and then they're good to go. So it's a much, much faster way of enabling that self-serve BI in a way that we never could do before, not easily with Excel. Another advantage is just simply you have much more flexible access to the content than you've ever had. We had a PMI roundtable here in Seattle recently talking about dashboarding, and the number one need of most executives was mobile access. They need it. They're never at their desk. They're always in a meeting. They're at an airport. They're wherever. And that this was one of the most compelling reasons for them to take a look at Power BI. Because once something is on a dashboard, it is immediately available via the mobile client, which you can download for any of your phones, log in with your same credentials, and it's just there. And the fact that Power BI was specifically designed for this, mobile first, cloud first, makes it where it's just a natural fit for this content. Whereas with Excel has kind of been backed into the mobile story. I mean, if you've got Excel on your phone, you know it's okay, but it's got its own challenges. And I think it's most effectively used when you're looking at it on the web or really for the desktop, and you need the detailed data. So there's definitely, I think, some things here around Power BI that, at least from the executive suite, they're much more open to using Power BI because of the way it's used. The other thing about Power BI, it's also positioned for our next wave of BI that's coming. And it's really the fact that we're going to have this pervasive BI where you're not even going to notice it. It's just there. I can't tell you how many times I ask Alexa questions during the middle of the day in my house. Now imagine, and this is a picture of my watch. I have a dashboard, a Power BI dashboard running on my Apple Watch with my key metrics that are being refreshed during the day. I have things around, like I have a video of Cortana integration. This is something that can be done as well, where you can simply ask Cortana, a question and have her answer it. We did a timing that if we went through the project server interface, it took 1 minute and 15 seconds to look up when somebody was available. Through Cortana, it took 10 seconds. So if it's something that you're doing a lot, I mean, you could have a significant savings of time. And this is something that Power BI is ready for today, as opposed to maybe what you're using today may not really give you that advantage going forward. The third one, and this is one that's been demanded, I think, by a lot of very large corporations, is I need better control over the data. And this is where, I will call my baby ugly from the Excel services integration. We were trying to just get you access to the data. And of course, immediately one of the things that came up was, but I only need certain users to see certain things. And there really wasn't a good way to do this. There were some ways around it if you were using, query string content filter and maybe the current user filter. So there were some hacks to get you there. But it really wasn't baked into Excel that I could restrict data to just this person. And this is where having the heritage of being based on some of the technology that is built into analysis services, it's baked into Power BI. So they have something called row level security, where I can filter everything in the model based on the current user. And also with content packs, we had this issue where with Excel services, well, somebody could download, the spreadsheet and then they can email it to somebody. And, how do you guard against that? Well, with content packs, you can actually restrict which groups actually have access to the content. And when they install the content pack, it just puts everything in place. And to combine that with row-level security, you get a much more secure reporting scenario. And then the templates that support that it has really is around, democratizing BI, where people who have a need to build out their own quick reports, maybe for an upcoming meeting or just for their team meetings or something, can do it without having to contact IT or a data analyst or what, because you've got these conversation-centric templates out there. Oh, this is a project status type data model. Okay, fine. You download that, and then you can build out your own. Again, you're enabling your team to work better and more effectively. And this is something that we really haven't been able to do outside of Power BI. The most exciting thing at least the thing I'm most excited about, is really we're taking BI even further with Power BI, and that's really with the integration with other Office tools. So most people don't know that Power BI, Power Apps, Flow and Stream are all part of the same big team at Microsoft. And this is part of this overall view that BI should not just simply give you something to look at. It should be part of your workflow. And so what we're seeing now is integration with Microsoft Flow, for example, where I can define a specific type of visual, like a card visual or KPI visual. I can attach a trigger to it to effectively, if this goes over a certain number or under a certain number, and then have it basically self-escalate. If it goes over, kick off this workflow, and this workflow will then start the escalation process. And a human didn't have to be involved in this process. And part of this could be, oh, we're writing records now into a SharePoint list. We're sending text messages to the PM. We're alerting an AD group. I mean, the sky's the limit here. And they're also doing more around being able to push data into Power BI. So I can do things now with Flow like create a management escalation issues list. And anything that gets added to that list is automatically showing up on their dashboards. So it's another way of incorporating BI into your workflow in a way that we haven't been able to do with our legacy tools of Excel and SSRS. Now, both of those tools are being enhanced to better rationalize, the functionality across. But right now, Power BI is clearly leading the pack. And one of the places, though, that they were playing catch-up was integration with SharePoint. Part of this was just simply so many people are using it with mobile that it didn't make sense from an investment standpoint to do this first. We needed a much better mobile client experience, which is where they've been investing. But we did finally get, very recently, about a week and a half ago, the new SharePoint web part that allows you to embed securely a Power BI dashboard. People were using the embed to web functionality before, which was the worst absolute way to do it, because that strips out all security credentials from being able to view the content. And so anybody could have done view source on the page, copied out that URL, pasted it to Twitter, and now the world can see that dashboard. And this was a huge, huge problem. So they had to roll out this new secure way of embedding Power BI. And then finally, if you've done any work with Power Apps, this is a much faster, easier way of creating these quick apps around your data. You could see scenarios where something shows up in real time on the dashboard. I can go into the Power App associated to it, make my updates. That gets pushed back by Flow into the Power BI dashboard. Everything's updated. So again, just trying to incorporate all of these. It's not just Power BI Plus. So before I go over to the demos here, I want to just see if there's any questions. If you have a question, put it in the chat. That's really the, we have a security question, so I'll talk about that. Let me look through the chat here. We could connect with Access through data. So let me cover the first one. Access is now a data connection within Power BI. So if you go into Power BI, let me fire up desktop here for a minute. So Power BI is updated, the desktop is updated monthly, the service is updated weekly. And it's been quite a challenge just to keep up with everything. And let me close this. So if you do get data here, and you do the more, you'll see that there's a ton of connections, including Access databases, SharePoint folders. There's a cool feature that they have for folder operations. So if any of you have a situation where, say, accounting is dropping a CSV file every month of charges for your project, and I've been in environments where they do that, you can use this functionality. If all of the CSV files have roughly the same format, there is an auto combine function when you connect to the folder that will automatically combine all of those files into one data set automatically without you having to do anything, and then you can create new dashboards and reports over it. It is the coolest thing ever. But if I've got Oracle, DB2, I've got people who are working in marketing who are connecting to Facebook. I have a model that connects to Exchange Online, because how many of you have sat there at the end of the week going, what the heck did I work on this week? I'm trying to fill out my timesheet. Well, one of the other Power BI consultants basically wrote a model, and I've taken it and made some changes for myself, that mine the calendar in Exchange. for yourself. And so I go through and I use the category fields, and in my use of it, I use my category field to flag everything I've worked on. And when I get to the end of the week, I refresh my model. It spits out everything I worked on, grouped by the client and the project, and I can fill out my timesheet very quickly doing that. So again, this is not your typical way of doing BI, but think about it. You can enable easier, quicker ways to get to that kind of information. If you had that sort of model for every team member in your organization, maybe time tracking wouldn't be such a hard problem for them to solve at the end of the week when they need to be somewhere else. And again, the list keeps getting longer. The other thing you'll notice, and I think this is significant for project people in particular, is we're seeing PPM competitors using Power BI now. So Project Place, Plan View, Smartsheet, I'm aware that there's a few others that are coming that I can't talk about yet. But the PPM space is actually driving a lot of the use of Power BI, and the competitors are noticing, and they are coming to the plate. So, I mean, it's just amazing to see this in here. And I think Trello is in there, and there's a few others that you can get to. So it's pretty amazing. The other question we had was around security. So there is an excellent security white paper around Power BI that talks about the whole infrastructure. It's essentially a two-tier service. They use extensive use of Azure. So essentially, the Azure Service Bus is used to connect to external data sources. It is encrypted at rest and in flight. So at no time is your data exposed outside of the encryption. No humans have access to it. Essentially, it's all done through an automation framework. The model, when you publish it, actually creates a analysis services tabular model in analysis services. And so it's effectively you're creating that in the cloud. It is cached at that point. And that is the by default access method. And the reason they do that is really for speed. Because the thing is, if I click on a bar in a chart, I want everything to filter almost automatically. There is a way you can do what's called direct query and go directly against your data source. Be aware, though, that the user experience in this case is pretty poor, because then they have to wait for that query to finish, and all they've done was they may have accidentally clicked something, and now it's got to filter the whole thing, and it's got to run 5 queries for this to happen. So it's one of those things where it's usually not something that you want to use unless you have a specific need for real-time data. See, but if you're interested in the white paper, what I'll do is I'll send that over to Dan and have him email it out to the group. I think if you have any interest in Power BI, it's definitely worthwhile to take a look at this white paper. It is an amazing read. And let's see, is the SharePoint web part available for both Project Online and Project Server on-prem? So we've been having a discussion around this right now because the web part is part of the new SharePoint framework that was rolled out a few weeks back, or a few months back now, I guess. And Project Online hasn't updated their SharePoint infrastructure to the new framework. And there have been a few of the other MVPs who have been trying to embed that web part into the PDPs, and they can't do it yet. And so we're having a discussion right now to figure out what is the timeline, when is this coming? As far as Project on-prem, I think the challenge, again, is going to be when is that new framework going to get rolled back into 2016, and when will Project update to use the new framework? And so we're going to be waiting on, I think we're going to be waiting on that a bit longer. I will say, though, for the clients that are using Power BI today with Project, that this really hasn't come up as a user demand. They've gotten very used to using all these disparate cloud services, and they don't have a problem just clicking out to another window. In fact, it's not uncommon to see people with 3 or 4 windows open at the same time. And they're more likely to use that snap to, the snap to functionality like in Windows 8 and Windows 10, where you just, or even 7, I think, have this, where you drag it over and it takes half the screen kind of thing. So I think it's one of those things where we may be actually more wrapped up around it than not. There is one area that you might want to explore, though, and that is you can pass one parameter, only one so far, to a Power BI dashboard or report. and I'm doing this currently, we're working on this with a client, where they'll have something that comes up, say through a workflow process, say you're doing Nintex or something, and they have to approve some item, and they need to look at it in the dashboard. So you can actually create your report in such a way that you can pass one parameter to that report and filter it for that one item. And so that's something that you can do. It's not, it leads to some very interesting design decisions, but it is usable in that fact, and the fact that it just pops up and they can see it, and then they can further explore the scenario that they're trying to do an approval around. Let's see, does your organization, yes, we do Power BI training, and in fact, I know Dan, he'll have more information around that. We do have some free sessions that are out there if you want more of a general intro to Power BI or specific types of situations. Like we have a performance clinic that we have that's been recorded, but Dan, he's the person you should talk to about the paid classes. We do have both intro and we have an advanced Power BI class that will be held at the end of March. So if you're already familiar with Power BI, we're going to go very deep into things like inquiry language. We're going to go deep into mapping, which has been a new hot area for Power BI. There's a couple other areas we're going to go deep into. Let's see, can I replicate time-phased OLAP cube-based reports project? So, yes. Let me scroll down here and let me show you the demo I was going to go to here. And this is something that we came up with. And I know, again, this is something you can talk to Dan about as far as the purchasing and whatnot. But we took a step back and we looked at a number of implementations. And we talked to the PMO directors. And I mean, we've all been doing this for years now. And really and truly, from a reporting standpoint, it turned out that about 85% of what people were asking for was the same. And we said, well, if we're going into Power BI, how do we make this easier for people to get in there? And so we created this Power BI product, basically, that does things like this, where if I wanted a portfolio view, I can do things that's automatically explorable. But the other thing, too, is because this is all Power BI, if I don't like the way this is done, if I don't want to work by portfolio, if I wanted to change this to be some other metric, there's already a data model here that can easily be changed. If I wanted to do something around, say, missing timesheets, because that's another common one if I'm doing time tracking, well, I can show you, let me make this full screen here so you can see the whole thing. So, I mean, I can show you stuff like, you know, who hasn't logged a timesheet, but I can also show you on a week-to-week basis what they have entered. I can give you a breakdown by the status. I can give you a breakdown of the admin time. I can show you how much missing time you have as a trend, because if I'm doing internal chargeback, that's money left on the table. If I'm doing external charges, that's money hitting the bottom line. I need to keep track of that. And then, of course, we've got built-in filtering here. So if I wanted to see, you know, just the approved stuff, I can click that and everything's immediately filtered, and I see it identically and immediately right there in the dashboard. So again, these are the kinds of things that you can do with Power BI. The challenge that I think many people have is really around performance working with time-phased data. There are some distinct differences in approach that you have to have when you're working with time-phased data, especially through OData. Unfortunately, I don't go into that here, and it's more of an advanced topic, but effectively what you're trying to do is reduce the amount of data coming across the wire. And unfortunately, and this is where, having worked with some of the PPM competitors that are also in the OData space, there's some more work that project needs to do to make their data model much easier to work with. And so you wind up having to do a lot of work to filter it down accordingly so that you're not pulling down the world. But, you know, you could do stuff like that. You could do time away reports very easily. Again, this is another time-phased type report where I'm pulling out all of my admin time and showing when people are taking off. Let me show you this one, because this one actually came about, and this was one of those needs that a lot of places had, and they just really talked about it from a standpoint. But over and over again, we kept finding that PM an amount of time creating status reports. mean, it's just unbelievable time. In some cases, 4 to 5 hours per week. We started looking at what, if you ever downloaded the old SSRS reports for Project Server 2007, I actually wrote the first report pack for that. And we had a project status report in that report pack that was downloaded 10 times more than every other report in the pack. I mean, it was unbelievable how many people downloaded that one report. So it made sense to kind of duplicate that here, where we're breaking out work, we're breaking out our cost information by capital and expense, we're doing KPIs. Again, here we can incorporate links that take you directly back to PWA. So if I saw something here that was yellow, I can just click here and go right to the project. I don't have to go open a new window. It'll do it for me. I can incorporate text data. And then here we're pulling in time phase data, so that if I'm looking at a specific project, I'm actually looking at the capacity mapping for that one project, so that I can see if we have an over-allocation problem like we have here with Howard. Work's not going to get done. He's going to be late on his task, and that's a conversation we can start having. So again, this is not your typical thing that we normally invest reporting around, but it is something that we could have a significant savings within your own organization, and something that you can incorporate into their weekly workflow. So it changes, in my mind, it changes the way you need to think about reporting. Don't focus on the report, focus more on the conversation. And the conversation will then lead to the data set that is necessary to create these types of views to better support that conversation. And that's where we get stuff like the team board, where the flip side of the PM communicating with status to stakeholders is, hey, let's talk to the team. So, active issues, overdue tasks, upcoming tasks, and that's the kind of stuff that they need on a weekly basis to help make their team more effective. So these are all things that you can do in Power BI. There we go. The other thing I was going to show you here, go back to that, is what happens if I still need Excel? What happens if I still want to go in here and I want to basically create a pivot table over this information? How do I do that? So one of the other things that they did, and they're using an architecture very similar to the way that Excel services is tied to project, in that if I go to the ellipsis menu here for a report, there's an Analyze in Excel functionality. If I click that, and I've already done this, so it's prompting me, it creates an Office data connection, which we should be familiar with from project reporting. And this then, when it opens up in Excel, and if I log in here, so let's see, sorry about that. I thought I'd logged in, but obviously it logged me out. But essentially what it does is it allows me to use the dashboard as the single source of the truth. So again, it creates this tabular analysis services model, basically an OLAP database in the cloud that I can connect to from Excel, and then I can do stuff like, I just need, current status. Okay, it's a summation. So there. Wow, okay, it's going to be that kind of day. Likes that one. All right, we'll go with that. And then I'll come down here to projects, scroll a little bit faster, resources. Everything that was in the model is available here. So again, this is why you'd want to go with a smaller model that's focused on the conversation, so that I just have the one thing or a couple of things that they need to see. So now I've got, percent of total cost by projects. I can see how big are these projects to my overall portfolio very quickly. And I've done all this in Excel, and I'm connecting to the data here. So it makes it very easy then to not only just use it as is, but to extend it further with Excel. Now, if I wanted to see what this is going to look like, or say I wanted to create my own dashboard, if you notice when you hover over this stuff, there's a thumbtack here. So I could do things like, I'm going to create a new dashboard for myself. Let's do this. pin it. And then I'm going to go to performance, where I'm looking at work by type. I'm going to pin that. And I'm going to put it on the same dashboard. And then I'm going to go over, I'm going to go into my other model, the timesheet audit. And here I want the time request. So maybe those are the things that I care about. And I've been able to go through and basically take all of my various pieces and make my own conglomeration of things I care about. And then if I wanted to see what this is going to look like on mobile, I can switch to the phone view, and I can see it's going to look like this. And if I want this to be further up, I can simply drag it up. Let's try that one more time. And now that's here. And maybe I don't want that here, maybe I want that here. So now when I pull it up on my phone, this is immediate. I haven't had to call IT, I haven't had to go through 3 committees' approval. I just simply have to log into the app, and I can see this immediately. And I could even remove this where I don't want this on here. So I'm just going to take it off. So let's take it out, and it puts it over here. So I just see these 2 things, and I can resize them, make them longer, so I see more data. So something like that. And then if I go back to the web, I still preserve the web view, but again, I can drag stuff around. I can maybe make this down here, put this up here, make this wider. Total control over this. And this is something the user can do for themselves. They don't need you to do this. They do need, however, for you to probably help them figure this out. And then something like this where I have a card, I can come in here to the ellipsis menu, and there's this bell here. So the bell is where you can manage your alerts. So I could do things like say, oh, I have an alert for overdue task, so if I want the count, if the count goes over 1,700 or something, and I want this every hour, God forbid, but you'll get a lot of changes here, send me an email. Well, the thing is, once I set this alert, and if this value goes over that, you can have it do different things. You can have it send an email. You can have it fire a event in Microsoft Flow. On your mobile app, you can even have it appear to have sent you a text message. So it would show up as an alert the way a text message would. And again, that's not something you have to do centrally. The person can do it themselves. With content packs, and this is something that you may have seen here, it's under the Get Data. There are a number of content packs that are published automatically for the various services. And there is one out here for Project. The challenge that you're going to find with these is that by definition, a centrally published content pack cannot have a changing schema. So they don't have your custom field information here. They don't even know about it. They're fixed at whatever the out-of-box fields are. But the thing is, they're very easy to install. You fill in a URL, you click OK, and it just shows up. Now, the flip side of this, though, is there is, if you're in the Pro version, the My Organization content pack. So I can do stuff like this where I'm going to get, sales data, and maybe I'm in the right group where I can see this. I click Get It Now, and then it'll automatically just start showing up here on the side as it installs it. And so now I've got, here's my whole page dashboard. So I'm going to go here. Oops, to click it. Hopefully I clicked it. Let's see. It's still installing it, that's why. But again, I didn't have to do anything. I could just get to that access. So I could have things set up for marketing. I have stuff set up for HR. I can have stuff set up for the PMO, for the project managers. However I define those groups, and then have it just show up. All right, let me refresh here real quick. Hopefully my connection is still alive here. Says so. So where did it go? Full page dashboard. Here it is. Oop. Shoot. Okay. So other questions. So here's what I should be seeing, which is the picture that you would have seen earlier in the presentation. Except this is more real time where I could click on things and you can have hover. So we have tooltips now. So you can put stuff in custom in the tooltips. So in this case, I'm looking at transactions where I can see by state, declared state, amount, total taxable, which is the short square here. If I come down here, I can click on this block and see where all it's sold, outstanding revenue. So again, it lends itself to data exploration in a way that we haven't been able to do before. All right, and then the only other thing that's out here is really, oh, there was one other thing I did want to show you. So they're rolling out this functionality, and the other one that they're rolling out is the PowerPoint export. So if I wanted to export this to PowerPoint. And the reason they did this was back when we were studying how people were using BI, we know that 33% of all reports are basically in Excel. They either start there or wind up there. The more interesting stat, though, is 32% of all reports wind up in PowerPoint in some fashion. So you now have this ability to export Power BI data into a PowerPoint deck. Now, it's still in preview, and there's still some things that aren't exported, but I could export this and take this to a meeting now if I didn't have access to the real thing. And I could do this without having to have copied and pasted anything. It's just there. The last thing I want to show you here is something that I think is probably the most powerful feature of Power BI, and that is that they opened up their visuals framework. And what they did is they made it open source so that anyone can create a custom visual. And so if I needed a Gantt chart visual, I can download that from here for free and pull it in here. So you have your Gantt chart. If I want a stars rating, that kind of thing, over maybe some SharePoint information, I can pull that in. If I want Sankey type visuals, or the Synoptic Panel is actually a custom mapping application where maybe I'm tracking project activity in the building, or conference rooms or something like that. You could visualize it that way. I actually had a city government who wanted their project team work visualized by location because they were running into too many people showing up at the same place and getting in each other's way. So if you're in construction, that would be a huge thing. But again, all these are available out here. You can just plug them right into Power BI, and they just work. And now you can start using them. So again, the flexibility, the power of it, the fact that I can use it on my phone, and the fact that I can pull in data from pretty much anywhere is just amazing. In fact, I was telling someone I do a lot of wine shopping, and I got tired of trying to pull up the Wine Spectator site on my phone because it was just slow. So anything that's in a table on a web page, you can pull out using Power BI as you could from Excel. So I wrote a Power BI model to mine their website, and that's what I use when I'm shopping. But if you had a accounting calendar internally on a web page from accounting, you could pull that in directly into your Power BI model using the same technique. It's really pretty straightforward to do. Let's see, have you seen anyone use Power BI connected with language protocol, AI expert system rules and facts? Not at this point, no. What I have seen primarily have been ties into the Cortana analytics piece of it. So we had Gil, who's one of the other MVPs, he wrote a Power BI model that was mining Twitter and then running it through like sentiment analysis to determine, how positive or negative it was. And I actually had a PMO director who wanted to do something similar to their status report information because they wanted to see if people were saying it was green, but the way they were writing it was kind of red, which I thought was a rather interesting take on it. But no, I haven't seen it with Prolog yet. I do know that they are making further investments to make it easier for you to tie it into at least the Cortana and Azure functionality at this point. So I would say stay tuned. There's more to come there. Other questions? I know we're 2 minutes from time here, so I want to be very cognizant of that. So it sounds like we've got some follow-ups around training to get out there. What I will do too, and I'll send this to Dan, is I have a resources document that I give to most people that basically has the links to a lot of places on the web that you might want to check out. And we also have, if you're using Windows 10, we have a Power BI News app that can help you stay on top of all of this because there's just a ton of stuff going on. Thank you, Mark. Direct refresh of data. So let me ask you further. So essentially, are you looking for all of your end users to do a direct refresh, or is the scheduled refresh not working for you? I guess that would be my question. So actually, the users can't do a sudden refresh. It's only the owner of the model can do it. So you don't have to worry about every user trying to do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciate it, and thank you, Trev, for coming through and presenting. We really appreciate
Okay.
it.
All right. No problem.
All right. Take care,
Thanks.
guys.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.